we are too quick to judge. I think that's also an outcome of social media because you have to take a position on something quickly.
Yeah.
And in that sense, I think we lose a lot of... Because see, there will be people we'll disagree vehemently with in our country. So what are you going to do with it? Throw all of them into the ocean? They will also live here, na? So, and how are you going to live? That we will not talk to them, they will not talk to us, everybody will live in their ghetto? No. So there has to be some level of... I'm not saying accept that point of view, but try to explain why that's wrong rather than cancel the person.
Yeah.
This is the first time that I'm telling this story.
Hello there, and welcome to Whips and Chains.
An individual can be sold innumerable times.
What are the whips that we flog ourselves with often?
I discovered cancer, I had breast cancer.
And what are the chains that bind us down?
फिर मैंने YouTube पे देखा कि फीमेल फिटिसाइड होता कैसे है.
Is something I want to explore in my show.
They're orphans.
It's okay. It's okay.
गर्दन निकलती है, बाकी हिस्सा ऐसे ऐसे करके निकलता है. यार इतना बड़ा पाप होता अपने गांव में.
It's horrific.
Somebody passed me by and hit my bum.
He did have a personality disorder.
कई बार मैं सो ही नहीं सका.
All the traffickers that I've seen, they are common people like you and me.
She said, Kanda tu dein, vata putar tu.
If you talk about human trafficking, it's $1 billion business.
There was a lot of violence, a lot of aggression.
बड़े बड़े पुल बना दोगे, उनसे ह्यूमैनिटी तो नहीं बनने वाली.
And welcome to Whips and Chains. Hello there, and welcome again to Whips and Chains, my show where we talk about thought-provoking and somewhat provocative things that society generally asks us to shush. Today, I'm very happy to introduce to you one of my oldest friends and someone who worked with me at a time when Friends was a thing and there were no filters in our conversations and our interactions. And in fact, in many ways, he's been like my Chandler Bing. And you know him as someone who consumes politicians and right-wing journalists for breakfast and lunch, but I know him as Nikku. And we are going to talk about how it is to grow up with very strong and opinionated women, among many other things. So, hi, Nix, and
Hi, Nave. It's pleasure being here.
thanks
Hello,
for
everybody.
yeah.
Yes, and
Yeah.
you were talking about no filters. I was just thinking that back in, I think in some ways it's good that, things have evolved the way they have.
Yeah.
But in some ways, just because it was so unfiltered interactions, in today's workplaces, you can't probably have those kind of bonds.
Absolutely.
I mean,
And in fact, in terms of just how cool we all were, in the mid 90s. You remember?
Nivedita once wanted to do a story on these sexologists of Paharganj. There's this, I think they still exist. And, back when there were no multiplexes, there were single screen halls, and every film used to start off with Sablok clinic and a show clinic apni sex ki problem. And her husband, who used to work with us, refused. I'm not doing such a stupid story. How disgusting. I'm not going with undercover with hidden camera to these. So she convinced me as a husband.
Yeah.
And then one of these very sleazy doctors in Paharganj, in
Chandni Chowk.
Chandni Chowk,
Chowk.
said, "Theek hai, ab I will examine you. Please take off your clothes." So I looked at her. She's like,
No.
I was like, dude, this is as far as I go for your story. I'm not getting naked in front of some sleazy doctor. अरे जाइए ना. मैंने समझाती हूँ डॉक्टर साहब. I was like, doctor साहब.
No, the funniest was that it was a spy cam shoot. And the cameraman had gone as our elder brother.
Yeah, because we could not operate the spy cam. These are generation 1 spy cams, which had to have a cameraman.
So the cameraman was like, भैया. And he was like, ठीक है, आपकी जो भी प्रॉब्लम है, इनको बोलिए बाहर जाने के लिए. We were like, नहीं, जो होगा भैया के सामने होगा.
I wonder that footage still exists somewhere in the India Tree libraries.
But another thing I remember about you is that when I walked in on my first day, you were sitting on Alpana's desk. The boss's desk with his legs up. And I thought, यार ये बहुत cool dude है, जो भी है ये है कौन? मतलब
Yeah, with the
do we have to report to
feet on the desk.
so so anyway, I mean, coming from those times where we could say anything and we were like, I mean, we used to work like 5 nights a week, and I used to carry a toothbrush in my bag, and we
remember.
had no concept of HR or any kind of rights, remember? I mean, I think our salaries we used to spend on Nirula's popuri, yaar.
Yeah,
Kya hi ghar le jate
but
honge
also
hum?
because elections, I mean, there was an inevitability to that because election counting wouldn't happen like right now. The counting starts at
Right.
9.
Yeah.
And because when we were there, 2 elections happened because
Yeah,
Atal's
yeah, yeah.
13-day
Yeah,
government,
yeah.
13-month government,
Right.
and then the coalition. Now, because it was ballot counting, I mean, I don't think there was a choice but to stay in office or, wherever you were stationed for
Right.
nights because results would keep coming and you had to keep updating. I mean, I think today, while I get, you have to have a certain work-life balance. I don't think it was healthy the way we guys used to go to office on Monday and come back on Thursday with our toothbrushes.
Next.
But if there was ballot counting today, let's say,
Yeah.
would there be any other way? I mean, let's say I
No,
was covering
Niku,
it.
I'm talking about news track. तो हमारा weekly
हाँ,
था,
हाँ.
आज तक हमारा daily
Daily
था.
tha. So there were
तो
two shows.
there were
that
two
you-
shows
sure,
happening in
sure.
any case.
And then,
yaar.
of course, when Aaj Tak, that was the boom time of
Yeah, it
of
was
television.
absolutely the boom time of television, and I think we were sort of creating rules. We were making them. We were breaking them. मतलब सब कुछ हम ही कर रहे थे. You know, I mean, we had absolutely no identity other than all of us together. I mean, just the way the Friends show is actually.
Yeah.
You know, when I watch Friends, it's very the kind of dynamics in those things. I mean, why Chandler Bing has kind of really hit me hard is because we had those really earthy relationships where घर तो कुछ था ही नहीं. We were living in
Yeah,
office.
because, yeah.
We were all family.
It was all, yeah. Because I think it's because you spent so much
so
time
much
in office.
time. I mean, you know, I remember your kadi chawal ka dabba is coming, and you remember, and
Yeah.
everyone was like, "Nikku, tell your mom to send kadi chawal," and those big these things coming in. So, you know, just like backtracking and going off on another tangent now, because really, I mean, I want to explore and unravel how you, as the person I knew, became this person that you are now, who's eating politicians and people for breakfast and lunch. Tell me, what were your initial influences growing up? Because you grew up as the youngest in a very women dominated family, right? So tell me a little bit about your childhood and all of that.
So, I mean, I grew up in Dehradun. My mom was a teacher at Wellham. She taught English. In fact, she taught Madhu.
Yes.
And my sisters.
And she taught all of us, actually.
Yeah, she taught you as well.
Yeah,
So she
yeah.
taught there for, I think, over
Yeah.
25 years.
Yeah.
So she taught various generations.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there were a lot of books at home. I had two older sisters, both were smart academically. So there was always that awareness, and especially, I mean, I felt among my peers, because I was in all boys school, 6 years at
Yes.
Wellham, 6
Yeah,
years at Doon.
Doon.
I used to get educated a lot on stuff because I'd come and parrot what I heard in the locker room, the bro scene,
Right.
and I'd get like,
Wrapped.
how dare you say that? What shit? And then my sisters would tell me that, I mean, that's not okay. That is not
Yeah.
acceptable. So I think in one sense, I was able to ride both, which is why even till today I have really good relationships with my male friends and also have very good, female friendships.
Yeah.
Because I get it from both sides. And I mean, I understand where each side is coming from. But I do think that a lot of my tendency for combat comes from my mom and my sisters, because they were combative.
Yeah.
Still are. Which is why, a meal at home is never a quiet one. So it's just arguing about something or the other. I got to read a lot because of, mom's book collection, and because you tend to, if you have an older sibling,
Yeah.
whatever they're reading, you end up reading.
Yeah.
To the extent that I even read a few Mills and Boons because they were just there, And there was no internet, or we didn't even have cable TV, right? It was just Doordarshan, which was boring most of the time. And that also used to only, transmission used to start at 6 in the evening or 5.
Right.
So you spent a lot of time reading. not because you were interested, because there was nothing else to do
Yeah.
in a small town. Or you went and flew kites when it was
Hmm.
raining in Dehradun, which was raining a lot. You could not go out
Yeah.
and fly
Right,
kites.
right.
So then you just ended up reading. So I think the influence of my mother and my sisters is huge in both my interests and the choices I've made, and even in the person I've become.
But like, when you talk about like this women dominating the whole storyline and narrative of a person's life, was there an assumption, like, when I was growing up, there was an assumption that women do what men tell them. Did you kind of at any point think कि men do what women tell them and then find कि नहीं यार ये तो कुछ उल्टा ही हो रहा है मेरे घर में?
No, I've never thought of it like that, and I don't even think I kind of processed it in that way, that men do what women tell them. Because I mean, my sisters are bossy, like
Yes.
siblings are, especially when you have a younger
Yeah.
brother.
Yeah.
Uh, but my mom wasn't bossy in that sense. So in that sense, I don't think I, thought the dynamic was this one, bosses over that, or that bosses over this. But I definitely found myself rather different in my approach to the gender dynamic than many of my friends in school who had only brothers, who grew up
Yeah.
in a very
Yeah.
male
Yeah.
dominated
Yeah.
kind of household. Very early in my life, it was clear that I have a very different view than these
Then
guys. Like
these
the kind
guys.
of jokes that were acceptable. uh, I wasn't like a stick in the mud that I read and someone said something, I said, how dare you say that? I
But
mean,
you quiet.
I I I would
Back
get
off.
that, look, this is this
Yeah.
is not a comfortable kind of conversation.
Huh.
So those kind of things I was aware of. I
Huh.
realized early that there's a slight difference in that, and I've also come to realize, and it just so happens that almost 90% of my friends, you know, I can, I'm thinking of two who have sisters. Others are all
All.
brothers. So in that sense, one was aware of how you approach things differently and how they do.
And what
But
about your dad? Like, what was your dad's
he
role?
was I mean, he was in the forge, so at least
Yeah.
till I was 13, he was in non-family stations, because mom,
Yeah.
we used to live in
Yeah.
Dehradun.
Dehradun, yeah.
My mom was very clear that we won't be traveling to all
All these.
cantonments with him. She wanted us to study in Dehradun, and she was teaching there. So we'd only go there for the summer break or the winter break, or when he'd
He'd
get
come.
leave and
Hmm.
come.
Hmm.
Otherwise, he quit the army, I think, in when I was in the seventh or sixth, if I remember correctly. So till then,
There was no, yeah.
it was
Yeah.
because when he
Holiday.
was
Yeah.
when he was posted to Siliguri, and now the cantonment there, the markets and the tea gardens have kind of extended right up to the cantonment.
Yeah.
But when he was posted there, the cantonment ended and the forest started. So we'd see elephants.
Wow.
Going for
Yeah.
holidays to the to where dad was posted was an adventure. When he was posted to Mathura, the cantonment kind of ended where the at the banks of the river.
Huh.
So then you'd go there with your little air gun, and I
Huh.
remember my dad, because all cantonments, I guess the kids are given an air gun, now go shoot squirrels and birds.
Huh.
That I remember. My mother didn't approve of it, but she didn't snatch it from my hand. But she knew I'd miss most of the time. Once at the back, we had a vegetable patch, and I shot a maina, and it fell. And the oddly, Ami
Yeah.
has
Yeah.
oddly, he
Yeah.
came and said, Ki Baba has shot a bird. So my mother made me sit and said, now tell me the story of Siddharth and the Hans.
Oof.
You remember
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that
Yeah. Yeah.
pick
Right.
which side,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
had to tell her the story. And then she says, have you learned a lesson? Your father's given you this gun and you run amok in and cantonments are forests half the time.
Yeah.
But shoot a tree here, take a can, shoot a can. Why do you have to shoot an animal? So I mean, those kind of influences there. But yeah, but once my dad came back, then I went to boarding. So in any case, then it was
But in the evolution of how people grow up, people who stay with their parents as opposed to people who grow up in boarding,
mhm.
there is also a sort of a difference in how they perceive things and how they internalize different narratives, don't you think? Because in, at home it's a very isolated ki hamare yahan to aise hi hota hai.
Hmm.
But when you go to a boarding, you realize that yours is just one of so many other
Right.
narratives. So that kind of gives you a very broad sweep of.
In a sense, but I'd say what really opened my mind was Delhi University.
Okay.
I mean, although I hardly attended any classes in my 3 years there, but
What were you doing when you say that?
I mean, you
Hang
just
out.
hung around with,
Yeah.
because you
right.
had, see, one was then when you came from DU, from Doon to DU, it's a very regimented, very strict
Right.
discipline. Like your
Right.
shoes have to be polished, your hair have to be cut, your stockings have to be up. And you were in a place where the professor didn't even give a shit whether you were in class or not. Like in my second year, I attended 3 classes in the full year. So it was like I had never seen freedom like this. So I guess you ended up never going to class. And
Yeah.
luckily there were a bunch of us, some were in Hindu, I was at Hansraj, somewhere at SR, somewhere at
Right.
Stevens. We were all within.
Oh, yeah.
So we, get together at the Hindu canteen for breakfast, all
Yeah,
8,
yeah,
9 of
yeah,
us.
Yeah.
But then that's when I encountered people who, I mean, while there is a fair amount of diversity at least in my time at Doon, but it
Our
wasn't
time.
that. Yeah, in our time, but it wasn't that. There were the
Yeah.
Fauji kids,
Yeah.
there were the IAS kids,
Yes.
there were the few politician kids,
Yeah.
Rahul
And
Gandhi
the-
type
yeah.
and Scindia type, and then there were
Rais wale jo, the royals and
royals type.
Huh.
Then there were the kids who were on scholarships, which was,
Scholarships.
I think, I mean, when I think about way beyond our time, like
Yeah,
today.
right.
So, and then there was so there was a fair smattering, but they were not. But everyone was there to get educated. Everyone spoke the same way,
Same way,
or at
yes.
least tried to. Do you suddenly had this
Yeah.
Jat gang from Chandraval? You had the
Yeah.
the Hindu hostel used to be dominated by Biharis.
Yeah.
So what we used to call the Harrys from there.
Yeah.
They didn't speak like you. They did
Yeah.
not have the
Yeah.
same pursuits. They were very clear in first year that I'm going to join politics.
Huh.
So I had never
Or
come
the
across a
IAS,
person like
yeah,
that. So
yeah.
or the guy, and then there were the people from close by,
Yeah.
and also in a boarding school, whatever happens outside doesn't impact you. So it's like this uniform
yeah,
thing
yeah,
that is
yeah,
happening.
Right.
Here you see everybody for what they really are. Like at school, I did not really know, what a big deal Sindhya is, because there was no way of knowing.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone spoke the same way.
Yeah,
Everybody,
yeah,
back chatted the same way.
Totally, yeah.
He was bullied as much as everybody else
Yeah.
was bullied, if not more, actually. So, but in DU, you suddenly said, "Oh my God,
He's
everyone
that
is so
and
different."
different, huh?
This is that
Yeah,
big a
this is
deal.
that-
Oh, okay, this
yeah.
one is such a big deal.
Yeah.
In school, you didn't know it was such a big deal.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you met people who would like beat up each other. You'd never seen that. So that was like, huh? Like in the middle of
Yo,
college,
get
tar,
apart.
tar. I was like, damn, I'd never seen shit like that, So
Yeah.
DU is, I think, what really, in one sense, I guess boarding school prepares you for, it makes you tough because of today those punishments aren't allowed, but,
Yeah,
doing drills in the
drills
winter
and-
on due at 12 o'clock
Drinking
at night.
milk and running.
Stuff like that, you can't, any school
Yeah.
would get shut down if today those kind of punishments are given. But I'd say DU is a fantastic cross section of society. It teaches you how to kind of deal
Negotiate.
with every kind of person.
You think being in DU even today is an education that is different from other universities, the private ones? Would you say that?
I would think so. I know it's changed a lot for the better. I mean, now I think you have to attend class. You can't not attend any class and get away with it. Discipline is, now, gang fights are not normal. I don't believe they happen. In fact, Hindus rusticating it was in yesterday's newspaper, some dozen kids. So I think a lot of
My husband's been in a gang fight also.
yeah,
by the way.
that generation was, so so I think there are a lot of changes for the better,
Yeah.
but I do think it's an education because it is still a cross section of society which you will not get in most other universities. You will not get that in Bombay, definitely not. But again, Nivs, we're 50, man.
Yeah, right.
I don't know whether that's a good thing or not. Like, we think that's good. It prepares you. Maybe you don't need that preparation for this generation.
Yeah.
For this generation, academic excellence or whatever you're doing, that excellence
Yeah.
is more important
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
having a worldview. Like, I don't know if it's a skill for today's 19, 20-year-olds to be able to sit with a bunch of hardcore Chandrawal jarts and be able to talk and be comfortable
Huh.
there. Maybe it's not a requirement. Maybe it's not a requirement to be
social ease is no longer a requirement, it seems.
I mean,
हमारे
yeah.
जनरेशन में इतना बोलते थे कि सबसे बात करो, एक लिहाज होता है, there's a way of talking to different generations and types of people, and you have to give everyone space. But
Yeah. I mean,
I don't
yeah.
know.
I mean, I think it's a mixed bag like everything else. I think a lot of things that were acceptable in our time, it's a good thing that they're not anymore.
Yes.
We won't,
Yes.
take names, but
Yeah.
some of the workplace conduct when we were back then
Right.
was completely out of line.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that is not okay. But many other things like if you're talking, I remember this guy, I won't name him, but he was from the rural Haryana sports quota. He was in the Hindu hostel. He wasn't a bad guy, but some of his views were criminal. But today, if he uttered that, either he'd be ostracized or he'd be cancelled or get out.
Cancelled, yeah.
But I think in our time you made allowances.
This is
Okay,
for
dude.
those. Yeah, he's
His
from
name
there.
is his
Yeah.
initials are SJ. I'd say, look,
Yeah.
SJ, dude, that's ऐसा
Yeah.
नहीं होता यार.
हाँ.
ऐसा अच्छा नहीं होता. मैंने कहा नहीं होता. You cannot do this here.
हाँ.
गांव में ठीक है, यहाँ पर ठीक नहीं है. You cannot, and you'd still sit, talk to him. He would not be pushed.
Yeah,
there.
pushed.
Today, if you were to articulate that
He would be, yeah.
Either his confidence will be shattered that I cannot open a mouth in public, or so I think in that sense tolerance has gone down across the board, in the sense that we are too quick to judge. I think that's also an outcome of social media, because you have to take a position on something quickly.
Yeah.
And in that sense, I think we lose a lot of, because see, there will be people we'll disagree vehemently with in our country. So what are you going to do with it? Throw all of them into the ocean? They will also live here, na? So, and how are you going to live? That we will not talk to them, they will not talk to us, everybody will live in their ghetto? No. So there has to be some level of, I'm not saying accept that point of view, but try to explain why that's wrong rather than cancel the person.
Yeah.
So I think it's a mixed bag
It's
with
a
the
mixed bag
with what is the expectation of social interactions in today's day and
Yeah.
age.
But when it comes to like what you're talking about, the toxic culture in offices, and particularly with the gender equations,
It was hard being a woman.
It
back
was
then.
very hard being a woman.
Which is why hats off to Madhu. I mean,
yes,
and-
absolutely hats off to
and I'm
Madhu.
sure you also felt the change when Madhu was boss, when Madhu was the prime at
Absolutely.
Newstrack.
Yes.
From the time she quit,
Yes.
how the environment
Everything
changes.
changed.
Instantly it changes, because the person at the top, if the person at the top is a woman, especially like Madhu,
yeah.
The change is not gradual.
Yeah.
You replace that person with a man who's
Yeah.
not even a very
Yeah.
evolved man.
person. Yeah.
The change is
Instant, yes,
instant. It's
instant.
like bang, like 1 month the change happens. So
I remember, I mean, Madhu was very supportive of women and people, and you were free to do your thing. But I remember, she used to just find things so silly. I remember there was this interview I did with Nitish Bhardwaj, when he was playing Krishna. I was sent for an interview. And then he gave me the interview, and then he said, "You will not use this interview because I have a sore throat. Okay? So please do not use this interview." And I was like, yeah, okay, whatever.
Because he was such a big
because
star.
he was such a big star, and this BJP guy and whatever. And then I came back and I told Madhu that, she says, "Oh, forget it. He's just being stupid." And then he sent one letter bitching about me that, what kind of values does your journalist have? So, I went to Madhu like he's just being silly. Don't worry about it. It's just vanity. He's given you the interview. But exactly.
You were there for the pleasure of his
the
company.
pleasure of his-
Interview
exactly.
karna to use to karna. I remember one thing that she said, that as a reporter, if you're going and if they say this is off the record, tell them no. Nothing's off the record.
Yeah.
If you're telling me, I'm going to use it. So
Yeah,
she was
yeah.
very clear
Yeah,
about
yeah.
stuff like that.
And even if it was things like safety and security and
Yeah, yeah.
and things like that, because
Those are, I mean, exactly those priorities. How
yeah.
And also, I think other than at home, I was also fortunate enough that the only two bosses I've had. I mean, although after Madhu quit, Sanjay
Yes,
was.
yeah.
I was born with Sanjay Pogalia, who
Yeah,
heads
yeah,
MTV now
yeah,
for a
yeah,
while.
right.
But it was Madhu Alpana,
Yes,
and I was there because of Sabrina.
yes.
And then I worked on Monsoon Wedding,
Yes.
where Meera Nair
Yeah,
was the
yeah,
boss.
yeah.
So,
A lot of women.
so the two big projects that I worked on, one in the news space, one in the film
Right.
space, it was women,
Women.
and really strong women were the
Yeah.
bosses. So I think that kind of, it was
Yeah.
it had an impact, because this is what a workplace should be. And I think that's important also, because what you are exposed to in your first job is what you think is normal,
Yeah.
which is why I worry about this generation of, I won't call them journalists, but the news professionals, because I don't think many of them will be journalists. I think they
True.
will just, flounder around in the news space wondering what we are doing, and in 5, 8, 10 years they will exit for
Yeah.
something else.
Yeah.
Um, uh, when they come in, like, someone like, whether we like them or dislike them, but people like a Sudhir Chaudhary, or what's his name, Arnab Goswami, or this Deepak, who was such a normal
Yes,
guy when
he
we were
was
there.
a normal guy.
Deepak
Yeah,
Chaurasia was a
exactly.
friend.
No,
I mean,
he
I
was a
remember
friend. Yeah, we hung
Deepak,
out.
Samar, and
We
we used
had-
to go
yeah.
overnight edits at that
Yeah,
Pav
yeah.
Bhaji place, Thuswa
Yeah.
cells, and come back up and then
We
edit.
were all hanging out together.
So-
That's why.
And it's not like, I'm sure Deepak's views were that different, but
Different,
it was a
yeah.
different time. It wasn't so.
Absolutely.
But for someone who's 21, 22, 23-year-old
Yeah.
coming in, these people are larger than life.
Absolutely.
So how they conduct their workplace, this generation thinks that's normal.
yeah.
Just like I thought it was normal
Normal.
for a accountant to get ticked off in front of the whole office because he asked a reporter, "Why did you drink mineral water?" Remember how Madhu?
Yes,
We
yes.
will not name
Yes.
him, but you know who I'm talking about,
Yes.
right? So she was like, "Dude, you are here because of the reporters. They are not here
Yeah.
because of you." And now, if this guy's in the middle of nowhere,
Nowhere, huh?
chasing those,
exactly.
the story that was being done was, I think, on illegal booze or something,
Huh.
and someone had bought a bottle of mineral water. She's like, what's he going to do there? Drink out of a puddle? So, for me, that was normal.
Yeah.
That, reporters do stuff to get the story. It's important. Integrity is important. Not taking shit from politicians important.
Yeah.
Because Madhu was a no shit person.
Yeah.
So for me, that was normal. So till today, I consider that normal behavior.
Yeah.
The youngsters who join today think that it's normal to sit and abuse the opposition, abuse
Yeah.
minorities, go insane on all that.
Drama.
They think that's
drama,
normal.
yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I think that makes a big difference, because your first job defines your normal.
Yeah.
And today's youngsters are coming in and thinking this is normal. It's not.
Not, yeah. No, I remember, I think what you're saying is very right, because Madhu would also walk into office like at 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. in the middle of something to just check that the story is okay, everything is okay. And so we assume that giving
That's normal.
24/7 to
Is
your
normal.
job is so normal. And what do you mean you have a life? You're getting married? Oh, that's 2 days off, right? So why do you need more? Remember? I mean, I remember that.
Yeah.
And I also remember at that time that when, like, if you were a young, pretty woman, it was assumed by the men in command that you had no other significant use news-wise but to take orders from them, and in whichever way. So in a way, I guess I was lucky in that regard that Rahul, my husband, was around. So then I always had that kind of, ki, "Acha,
Yeah,
isko
but
to
then
nahi."
maybe he should have gone for you for the sexologist story.
That's why you wanted to give me variety there. और कहीं नहीं.
जाओ.
जाओ. निक्कू को
Story
लेके
करके
जाओ. हाँ,
जाओ.
story करेंगे. And yeah. But the narratives even around women now have kind of, I feel a little bit sad though, that because it's come from that extreme to a really strong wokeism where you can't do anything now, you can't say anything, and it can be misconstrued. So that whole thing of where you can just be friends and be cool, and it's okay to, sort of joke and
Yeah.
flirt
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. I mean, you know how easy we all were. I mean, the jokes
Yeah. It was, yeah,
about you,
those
you
kind of
and I,
jokes.
Nev and I
Those kind
mean,
of
it
jokes
was,
would not be
yeah.
acceptable
And
anymore.
yeah.
But I mean, I guess it's a generational thing. I mean, I haven't really given it thought. I know that there is something that the generation will miss, but I think this whole social media kind of a performative aspect of, you know, performative ideology,
Yeah.
performative wokeism is, I think, an inevitable outcome of the correction that's happening. It's not a desirable outcome, but I think this is inevitable. Uh, it is restrictive for the youngsters. I think also excessive social media exposure adds to, mental
Yeah,
stress, which is
stress.
why there's a lot of I mean, that stress leads to all sorts of conditions or mental illness. I mean, I don't think it's an illness. I think the expectation of a life without stress is a foolish expectation. But stress is not, I have a condition like
Yeah.
anxiety.
Yeah.
Anxiety is a part of life.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
to say that it cannot also be a problem. Just like being low is a part of life, but depression is a problem.
Problem.
But every time you're low, you're not depressed. I mean,
Yeah.
let's be clear. So
Yeah.
it's, I think there's an over, diagnosis of moods,
Small things.
small
Yeah.
things, that
Small things are made a big deal.
everything is a production. Every conflict is a production. Every conflict is not production. Some is just a tu मैं hua, it goes on. Everything doesn't have to be escalated to some level of, oh, this has to be dealt with.
Yeah.
Then you'll be just dealing with shit all your life. Yeah.
But ये तू मैं वाले चक्कर में ही, for whatever reason, you have chosen to pursue a single and free life, है ना? So what are your, where do you stand as far as all of that goes? What about the significant other?
I don't discuss my personal life on public platforms ever.
No, but you have really this whole model of staying single and just like being a committed professional
Mhm.
is also a model of being now that is increasingly followed by
Modi
so
ji.
many.
See,
He asked
my
you.
model, I did not know he'd become PM, but it was Modi ji. कि हम तो फकीर आदमी हैं, ना अपने आगे ना पीछे ना. I've always fantasized, me and Modi ji with the duffly, अपने आगे ना पीछे ना कोई, हम तो फकीर आदमी हैं, निकल लेंगे. No, but I was very clear very early in life that I want to be single throughout life. So that's
But this also, some of the, I think, edginess in the next generation is also coming from the fact that वो जो हमारे जमाने में हर चीज में हम कॉम्प्रोमाइज करते थे ना, शादी भी, आई मीन, लड़कियों को तो यही सिखाया जाता है ना, दैट शादी व्हेन यू आर ग्रोइंग अप इज अ कॉम्प्रोमाइज.
I
तुम
get it.
दूसरे
I mean,
फैमिली में जाओगी.
inevitably, the woman
Inevitably.
has to make more compromises than the man.
Yeah.
But I think too much is burdened onto the compromise one makes during marriage. That's purely a function of you spend that much more time together. But I think as you grow older, you make compromise in every relationship, because when you're young, especially if you're in boarding, some of your closest friends who are like family, you've been in boarding,
Right.
you're stuck with them.
Yeah,
You ain't going anywhere, because if you've grown up with them, and when you get into your 30s and 40s, you often become very different people. But
They
you
stay.
are like a
They're
family.
wedded. They're
Yeah,
wedded.
but their politics may be different, their worldview may be different. So you make allowances for some of that which you don't agree with. That's a compromise with families, as you become older and you become your own person. So I think in one sense, to have rewarding relationships, whether it is that of a spouse, I can't, I have no experience in that, but you could. But I think that's true for most relationships in our lives. People who are dear to you, who you get some value out of
In some way or the
emotionally,
other, right.
you will have to compromise on many other things. You will have to give a free pass on things that you don't agree with. You'll have to give a free pass on, certain, I mean, you're going to have to redo your schedules based on something, that they want. And as they have their own kids, then it
Yeah.
becomes even more complicated, because you have a relationship with your friends' children. So I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it teaches us to live and let live. But I get the point that in marriages, purely because of the dynamic of the woman having to move house, the expectation for her to compromise is way more than the man. But having said that, I think every relationship you have to make compromise, otherwise you cannot maintain a fulfilling relationship.
No, I mean, I'm also talking in terms of this whole, narrative now, this Narayan Murthy's, thing about the 70-hour work week that, he,
I think that's bullshit. I mean, I
yeah,
disagree with him completely.
yeah.
Also, I think, I don't know why, whether the PR company is overactive or whether people are going to him for a mic. I mean, they're paying down on
Yeah,
everything, which
yeah,
I mean, I
yeah,
don't know, but I disagree with it completely. Just because we had no life doesn't mean this
yeah,
generation should have no
exactly.
life. I mean,
Absolutely.
I don't think this generation should work like we did. Like, you shouldn't have to go to
Yeah,
office on Monday and come back on Thursday. And
totally
I
not.
thought never used to take clothes also. I used to be wearing this. You remember? I used to be smelling like shit by the end of it. Yeah, because and joining two chairs and
Chairs
sleeping
and sleeping, yeah, on
because the
the
studio was too
edge
cold for
too,
me. I
yeah,
couldn't sleep there. I'd freeze to death.
yeah,
So I don't I think you have to have. And also, I mean, I don't want to sound mean or rude, but does Narayan Murthy have any other interest? Does he play football?
yeah. No,
No, he
no,
doesn't.
no, he
Does he go
doesn't. Yeah,
mountain climbing? I don't
no,
think he
yeah,
does. I think he
yeah,
just. So for you, that's exciting. But
right.
someone who likes to play football, someone who likes to go climb mountains,
Yeah,
someone
or
who likes
anything
to
else.
swim,
Yeah, yeah.
that's not the only pursuit. I mean, I think it's a very. But again, he is a product of his
His
times.
times. Yeah,
So I'm not going to demonize him. Oh, he.
yeah.
I disagree completely with it, and I think there are ways to
Yeah, yeah, and no, and this whole hype on this, just that 70 hours work week has contributed to the economy. Bloody all the hours of unpaid labor that women have put in has also contributed to the economy.
Hmm.
But are you talking about that in any way? Are you acknowledging कि तुम हो because तुम्हारी माँ थी, तुम्हारी पत्नी थी, तुम्हारा ये वो, all that backbone of, who
Sure.
so many men are
Hmm.
is because of all the women whose
Household
work
is
is
taken care of completely.
totally, totally
Bring up children. I mean, there's
bringing
so
up
much.
children.
So I mean,
Yeah,
I think this whole work for the nation, it's a very primitive kind of mindset. Dude, neither are you working for the nation, nor you're working for the shareholders. No one is.
yes,
Even fucking politicians aren't working for the nation. Yeah? I mean,
exactly. Let's
so
get
this whole
real.
thing,
Yeah,
I honestly think patriotism is a slightly
slightly.
primitive emotion. I
Yeah,
think you have to stick to values, and those
yes,
values can sometimes align with the
absolutely,
line that your country takes. Sometimes they don't align with the line your country takes. So, are you
totally.
being unpatriotic if you stick to, let's say, values? Let's say I mean, let's not take the Indian example. Let's say take Nazi Germany. During that time, Germans who opposed Nazism, oppose the Nazi party. Were they unpatriotic? Because they were sticking to values. But it was an overwhelming majority that Hitler won by.
Yeah,
So is that
where does that
patriotic?
lie?
Is
Yeah,
unpatriotic? So it's very subjective.
yeah,
I mean, I think it's patriotic to oppose communalism or a Hindutva ideology being thrust upon the people. For people who believe in that ideology and think that's the patriotic thing to do. So patriotism is very different to different people. I think your values are what
yeah,
matter. If your values say that, look, there is human rights as a value core to me, whether I'm an Indian, whether I'm an American, I used to have a Canadian passport and today I have an Indian passport. Today, like
yeah.
Akshay Kumar, like, do your values suddenly change? Like, when he had a Canadian passport, was he on Trudeau's side? And now that he's on India's, like,
Yeah,
so I think this whole do it for the nation kind of thing is, then go to China,
is
dude. G will make you do
yeah,
everything for the nation.
yeah,
These are very ill thought out and primitive mindsets. And you had a fantastic innings. You did fantastic work for yourself, for your company, for your shareholders, and for the nation as a
yeah. As a
byproduct.
yeah, exactly.
But you're wrong on
Yeah,
this one.
yeah, absolutely. No, so as a person now who's leading a news organization and who is dealing with a whole lot of new free thinking kids, because now everyone is on their own trip
Hmm.
in terms of how they think. There's no standard. So what are the things that you like to keep in mind and promote front and center in your organization?
Well, a few things I think that are good are that in some sense they are more outspoken, but sometimes a bit too outspoken in the sense that I've had people who come in for an interview in their early 20s, and rather than me asking them questions,
They are
they are
asking
asking me
you.
questions. I'm like, dude, you don't have a job yet. Or many of them will go so far as to start telling you how to run the
Run the.
company. I think that kind of cockiness is a function of the Zoomers. I could not imagine being interviewed by
Yes.
Madhu,
Yeah.
telling Madhu, I think, with India today,
This
you
is
should you should maybe look at the design element. She'd say, beta, that's the door, fuck off. I could not imagine, but today's Zoomer
Yeah.
won't be self-conscious in
Yeah.
payloading
Yeah.
yarn to
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Uh, Writing an opinion piece.
Right.
I have an opinion, like, I wouldn't even have the guts to pitch it to Madhu. Today
Yeah.
they'll pitch a
Yeah. Yeah.
report.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do a report. You
Exactly.
don't know enough.
Huh.
That really irritates me. That annoys me.
And their research is not there. It's opinions, not
Yeah,
research.
exactly.
Yeah.
And the things that I like are that at least the ones who come to Newslaundry, I'm sure that's not the typical Zoomer.
Yeah.
Because also once you have an image in the market,
Yeah.
a certain
A
kind
certain
of
type is
attra-
drawn to you. Yeah.
um, so the things that I like are the very brave, at least the ones who I work with. I think their commitment to a lot of facts, accuracy, values like fairness, justice is. I find that really fantastic. Their
Yeah.
value system, um, their fragility annoys me a little bit sometimes. Like if pushed beyond a point to deliver on a deadline, they'd rather abandon the deadline and take a day off than come
Yeah.
and face the deadline. That is something that really irritates me. But it's a mixed
Yeah,
bag,
it's a mixed
I definitely tell them that performative wokeness will not make your career. Don't think in terms of social media.
Yeah.
I definitely advise them that take some time off social media when you take a break. Just get off it, because I think what's happening is the filter in their head. Like when I'm looking at you, like many of them, when I meet them, oh my god, let's put a selfie, it'll trigger the people on Twitter. I've just met someone and already they're thinking that this is
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
be an
This
Insta.
would,
Like,
yeah.
put away, let's just catch
Just
up.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think for that reason, their emotional fragility annoys me sometimes. I mean, everything is not such a big deal that should shake you up. Then you cannot go through life. But their commitment to values and justice is something that I am extremely impressed by for their young ages. But it's a mixed bag. I mean,
But what about the gender dynamic? I mean, are the boys and the girls, do they function differently? Has everything changed? How has that?
well, I think it's still not a perfect equilibrium. I think there is still stresses and strains also because, geography matters. Uh, they understand, just like I told you about that guy I knew from
Yeah.
rural
Yeah.
Haryana.
Yeah.
Like, so, someone who's like a South Delhi person and someone who comes from, and we have people from all over the country. Something that is not necessarily meant, no, it is not even offensive. It is,
Yeah.
at least
just
from my perspective, it is a
culturally-
normal thing that you don't agree with,
Huh.
becomes something that is, this
Oh,
is,
this is-
some ism. So that I think over analyzing every utterance is not healthy for any party.
Anyone. Yeah.
But net, I think the trajectory is good. It's in a good direction. The niggles and irritants notwithstanding.
Huh.
What is not in a good direction is the complete normalization, mainstreaming of bigotry. Like it's normal to say the kind of things that
Yes.
are said. That is something in our office that, while everyone should have their own perspective, if certain lines are crossed, that person is not welcome even as a guest on our panel. Earlier we used to have a very
Broad.
big tent, and when we'd have events, our panel would have this, that, people who have said some but as the line for what you can get away by saying
is being
gone further and further,
yeah.
then you got to draw the line somewhere. So on that front,
Do you think India as such has become a safer place for women?
I actually can't answer that, because I'm not a woman, so I don't know on a daily basis the kind of gaze, the way I deal with people. But Uh,
Like, I can tell you that from my 20s to my 40s, I mean, now close to 50, but I used to feel very, very nervous going out alone.
hmm,
And now, like, since, I'm doing things, I'm appearing in court and things like that, I'm so grateful that I'm doing this after 40.
hmm,
Because before 40 तो मेरे को उतना confidence ही नहीं था to
hmm,
stand up to a whole lot of men who are looking at you in different ways, and sort of this thing, and this need to shut down what a woman is saying and to force her to agree with you.
hmm,
I mean, that you have to screw with her somehow. If nothing else, then screw with her brain.
hmm.
That badgering is still there. And
Yeah, I'm
and
sure it is. I was very surprised. I had gone to St. Stephen's. They had an event, I think 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago. And it was on the day of the election, Dusu election. It was around
Yeah.
the same time. So after my interaction and the panel discussion, I was just talking to some of the kids because I went to D after a
Yeah.
long time. So it was
Yeah,
nice to
yeah.
see the ridge
Yeah,
hasn't
yeah,
changed.
exactly.
Some of those roads haven't changed.
Right.
So I was like, and it was not at all women friendly when I was
Yes.
in DU.
Yeah.
I was like, how is it now? They said, no, even now like after sundown,
After
we would not
sundown, we
walk
would not.
on that from Kamla Nagar ourselves unless you're in a big group. I was like, dude, it's 2023. You can't walk down from Kamla Nagar
To
to your
hear.
hostel. They said, no, even today we can't. I was like, that is tragic. I mean, and we're talking about DU, where they have like 15
Yeah.
colleges are like right
Yeah.
next to each other.
Yeah.
They said, no, even now you can't do that. I was like, so
No,
that was depressing.
This
I was
morning
shocked.
on LinkedIn, there's this lady who's written about you. She was trying to help a girl who was getting catcalled by a group of boys, and she got bashed up. She's a
Hmm.
woman my age, and
Yeah,
she
so
got hit. And
I don't know if it's improved that much
yeah.
in the
So,
daily interactions. I don't think.
so I mean, whatever we say and what we do, there's a
Sure.
there's a
I think it's very slow. The progress on this front has been very slow. I mean, I won't say there has been no progress because at least in the
yeah.
maybe
We
in
are
the
talking
optics they
about
have,
it more. We are definitely
But
talking
yeah,
about it more. At one time,
but
we
it is
wouldn't have
ridiculously
even
slow.
spoken about it. But no, this has actually. Thank you for your time and thanks for coming.
My
And
pleasure.
it's been quite a delight going through a range of non-political
Right.
sort of issues with you, personal, social, and everywhere in between, including the sex talk. So you remember he said कि आप कुछ भी नहीं तो जब आप अकेले होंगे तो नाइटी को ऐसे
Naked.
naked हो जाइए.
I wonder if the doctor still exists.
Yes,
We should go and do a
yes.
part 2 of that investigation.
We should. Right now we can carry the cams with us. Yeah, sure. But no, thanks, Nix. I
Thanks,
really
Nev. It was a
appreciate
pleasure
it.
and all the
Yeah.
best for your podcast.